Across the Fence, we'll learn how entrepreneurs are using Vermont's universal recycling law to create opportunities to improve the environment and help out their local communities. Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. On July 1st, recyclable materials like paper, plastic, and metal will be banned from Vermont landfills. It is the second phase of Vermont's Universal Recycling Law, Act 148. Last summer, businesses generating 2 tons of food scraps a week were banned from sending those materials to landfills. These changes have Vermont business owners thinking about how to recycle what we throw away into job prospects and raising environmental awareness. Across the Fence's Keith Silva has our report.
The containers outside Commodities Natural Market in Stowe are not for trash. What's inside is a high-value product, and making sure it goes to the right place is the law.
It's materials management. It's no longer waste management.
As stated in Vermont's Universal Recycling Law, materials like metal, glass, and paper are banned from landfills starting July 1st, 2015. In addition, businesses or institutions generating more than 1 ton of food scraps per week are required to send those materials to the nearest compost facility within a 20-mile radius.
Vermont is the only state in the nation that has adopted a full disposal ban on food scraps, which is really innovative, and a lot of other states are looking to us to see how we're doing this and see what tools and resources we have to help with this.
Enter Grow Compost. It specializes in commercial food scrap collection for businesses in central Vermont. What they collect goes, or grows, into their own brand of organic compost.
In 2012, the state of Vermont passed the Universal Recycling Law, which created an opportunity for everyone to understand these materials as valuable resources that could be brought back into our soils, could be quality food that could be fed to people, food for animals, and so we've taken that as our model for our business.
This stop at Commodities Natural Market includes an added bonus. A value-added bonus, so to speak. Along with the compost bins, Grow Compost also picks up recoverable food for donation.
This beautiful lettuce, for instance, that Commodities has for us today, that is just in time before it, can't really sit on the shelf for too many more days. It doesn't feel good to throw, a crate of apples away. Even if you know they're going to compost, when they're perfectly quality edible apples. And so it's a feel-good thing, yeah, but it's also the right thing to do because it does cost a little bit extra. We don't want this to be a cost to those who are donating the food, nor do we want it to be a cost to those who are receiving the food.
Make no mistake, there's a big difference between food that's considered scrap and food that's deemed recoverable.
What we're talking about is the food that has not been served, has not been on anybody's plate. It may be breads that are a day old, bagel shops that put out day old bagels. I mean, those are still quality edible foods, but the quality, that fresh day bagel, is not there. So they may put that out for discount, or as an option as well, they could donate that to our food shelves in Vermont.
Food recovery is not a requirement in Vermont's Universal Recycling Law, but the legislation does consider the Environmental Protection Agency's food recovery hierarchy,
which sets out as waste reduction first and foremost. Following that is capturing the quality edible food to feed people. To put that into perspective, about 40% of food that goes to waste could have been eaten, and only about 10%, a very small percentage of that waste, and what ends up being wasted food, is rescued for donation and for use in other ways.
Grow Compost has had to modify their trucks so any recovered food is stored safely.
Rescuing food requires that we have separate compartments for those foods that are refrigerated and can hold special containers so that there's not any cross-contamination between the food scraps and the food that is going to people, even the food that's going to animals.
The cost to retrofit or purchase a truck to haul recoverable food is not insignificant.
From $1,000 to $10,000. I mean, you can do it at sort of any level. I wish I could say the bottom line is I make more money doing this. I probably don't. I like to say that it's a kind of a break-even situation. But for us, it makes our customers feel good. It creates more business for us. Most people who are composting are doing it because they care. So if they can find a company whose philosophy is about finding the best use for all this material, I think that that only is good for us and for them.
The recovered food is brought to the Community Kitchen Academy at Capstone Community Action in Barrie. The Kitchen Academy is a partnership between the Vermont Food Bank and Capstone Community Action.
We're making a lot of great food.
The Academy helps under- and unemployed Vermonters receive training in the food service industry. All the food Chef Jamie Eisenberg and her students are working with has either been recovered or donated to the Vermont Food Bank.
It's a win-win for everybody. You know, the food that we take here is food that's perfectly good to eat. It just might be a little blemished or maybe a label hanging off of a can or something. Not perfect for the marketplace. So we're helping out the economy by using that product. We're helping out the environment because it's not going to the landfill. It's being used in a training program where people are going to use that to practice their skill sets. And then it's a win for our community because what we do here is everything we make here. We make hundreds of pounds of food a day. All of that food gets packaged and put into our food shelf for the community to get to help sustain them through hard times when they don't really have enough food to eat.
Woohoo! Gorgeous. That is a beautiful looking scramble.
Eisenberg teaches her students that food that's been recovered, donated, or store-bought is still food. All it needs is to be prepared.
You know, when you're cooking food, you're breaking it down anyway. So we're going to take the product and evaluate it. And if it's something that might be past prime, then we're going to use the cooking method that's going to be the best match for that product. So yeah, it's a challenge, but I don't think that the product is really any less than it would be if we were to buy it from the marketplace in perfect condition.
Full implementation of Vermont's Universal Recycling Law goes into effect in 2020. Right now, the efforts of Grow Compost and others are bringing new opportunities to Vermont businesses.
It is a good, feel-good thing, but it's the way we do business. I think it's the way most Vermonters do business.
Recycling, caring for the environment, and giving back to the community. It's not just the law, it's the business of Vermont. In Barrie, I'm Keith Silva with Across the Fence.
Well, thank you, Keith. Here in the studio, I'm joined now by two guests. Rachel Carter is the Farm to Plate Communications Director, and Pat Sagwe is the Director of the Composting Association of Vermont and the Chair of the Farm to Plate Food Cycle Coalition. Thanks so much for being with us today. Rachel, remind us what the Vermont Farm to Plate is.
Farm to Plate is Vermont's statewide food system plan to create jobs and boost economic development at Vermont farm and food businesses and to make local food accessible for all Vermonters.
And so now how does composting and food recovery fit into that?
Composting and food recovery help Vermont reach three specific goals that are of the Farm to Plate strategic plan. One of those is to divert materials away from landfills and put them back into our food system. Another one is to improve environmental stewardship by farm and food businesses in Vermont. And the third is to make Vermont food more accessible to food insecure Vermonters.
And so how does the Vermont Farm to Plate partner with Vermont's Agency of Natural Resources?
We partner with the agency through the Food Cycle Coalition, and that is something that Pat is the chair of, so I'm going to let her speak to that a little bit more. But the Agency of Natural Resources are a part of that. Different businesses like Grow Compost, different solid waste districts, and Pat, who's the chair of that, and also the executive director of the Vermont Composting Association.
Pat, do you want to address that?
Sure, a little bit. The Agency of Natural Resources is the regulating body that's responsible for implementing the Universal Recycling Law, and we realized that there was a lot of opportunity in the food system, and they were a founding member when that coalition was formed. And I think the word cycle in there is the important one, because that's really what we're doing here. We're looking at every possible way to use this material and recycle it, whether it's used by good food that is captured, or it goes to feeding livestock, or if it goes to composting. But it all has a use, and it's just managing it in different ways, and it's really at this shift.
And so what's your interest in food rescue?
Our interest is that this is part of how we've decided as a state to manage this material. There'll always be material to compost, but there's a tremendous opportunity here to do things in a really different way, and I think we all recognize that in the Food Cycle Coalition, and it's a very collaborative effort to honor the hierarchy, to really help that guide the kinds of policies that we see we need in order to do the best we can do.
Now, by 2017, the majority of businesses will not be allowed to throw away food scraps in the landfill. What kind of infrastructure do you think is going to be needed?
Well, I'm going to let Pat speak to that a little bit more first.
Okay.
And part of it is going to be how successful we are. I mean, the numbers that Bryn referred to in the video segment. If we can pull out 20% more in food rescue, then those are composting facilities that we don't have to build. I mean, we have some infrastructure already, but it will really depend on, or how much material might go to feed livestock. And so it's evolving, and that was part of the reason for the phase-in, is so we could see you know, where the markets were strong, where the organization and the community involvement was such that material is getting managed. A lot of people are just deciding, well, I'm just going to start. This is the push that I needed to be composting in my own yard, and so we're seeing that.
Farms that are doing some sorts of, you know, compost operations in their communities, and then you have the large solid waste districts. And so I'm not sure how all of that operates, but that's part of the infrastructure is having materials being able to be brought there, and then there's all of the hauling. Like Grow Compost is an example of, you know, a business that's taken charge of, okay, we're going to include this as a part of our hauling service. So there's a lot of different opportunities there.
Yeah, are there other examples of entrepreneurs taking on food rescue and distribution in Vermont?
Well, one really nice model is an organization called Willing Hands that formed in the White River Junction, Hanover area, and we don't want this material moving any more than it has to, and so a regional model seems to be a good model, and that's one that's been going for several years now, and I think there's a group of folks in Bellows Falls that are actually trying to duplicate that, and I think we may see more of that. And again, it's collecting material from stores, mostly from grocery stores, so quality produce, bread, and then distributing that. And I think Willing Hands, just in that pretty small geographic area, and they're moving 3-4 tons of food. That is good food. That is unbelievable. And there's probably more that could happen there.
Now, we should mention that this is sort of a small segment of, you think, recycling. This is food that is definitely fine to eat.
Absolutely.
Food that's often, you know, sold at discounted prices, or for the most part, it's past its expiration date, and a lot of times it gets tossed. You know, the food bank is great because they already have a lot of existing relationships with some of these big generators, stores and resorts and different folks, so that they have that process in place where they're trying to collect that food and, you know, get it to places like Capstone to get processed or get it to different food shelves. But they're always looking for new, effective ways to, you know, distribute the rescued food, and how can we bring this to, you know, a statewide scale, so that that 4 tons that was mentioned of good food, you know, going to waste, it goes to, you know, no tons.
Well, you can learn more about the Vermont Farm to Plate strategic plan at their website. It's vtfarmtoplate.com. There you can find out information about the Vermont Farm to Plate Food Cycle Coalition, as well as programs on and off the farm that use food to strengthen our local economy. Thanks a lot for joining us today.
Thanks.
That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.